Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stover. Tonight, Tuesday Live will focus on economic challenges, national priorities amidst a global downturn. Now, for some time, a global economic crisis has hit the gross domestic product of many countries and other indices of national and international economy, with energy, currency exchange, and other factors taking the lead in the new economic regime. Now, the entire world is in debt distress. National budgets are at breaking point. Some governments are being forced to cut down spending, while others are borrowing more to stay afloat. Now, despite this situation, the Nigerian government has continued to keep the faith with the provision of infrastructure, interventions in entrepreneurship to cushion the financial depression and other social investment windows to support medium-scale businesses. Tonight, we have experts who will be x-raying these issues. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report from our business desk, put together by Benny Adams.
The better half of 2022 has been threatened by low global economic growth, high inflation amid lingering challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic, the consequences of war in Ukraine, as well as the domestic economic and security concerns, in addition to falling value of currencies, with emerging economies the worst hit, including Nigeria. Yet, the global community looks to Nigeria for energy solution.
This is going into international markets, which is clearly a problem, and we'll be discussing with the Nigerian authorities to find the most appropriate response to tackle the problem.
Not oblivious of the challenges at home, the nation's economic think tank came up with the medium-term expenditure framework draft document as guides to Nigeria's socio-economic development objectives and priorities for the next 3 years.
The Nigerian economy still sustained its growth, 5 consecutive quarters. Last quarter reported 3.11%, that is Q1 of 2022, with most sectors showing positive growth. We also projected that the nominal GDP, that is the size of the Nigerian economy, will rise up to 225.5 trillion naira, with 95% of this contribution by the non-oil sector, while the oil sector will be contributing only 5%. And then some steady increase from 2024 to 2025 to reach up to 280.7 trillion in 2025.
However, like most economies, the Nigerian economy is constrained due to exposure to risks associated with the global market, and that affects budget performance.
The higher oil price is offset by lower oil output as at April, which has stood at 1.3 million barrels per day. NNPC attributes this low oil production to the high incidence of crude oil theft as well as pipeline vandalization. We reported to Council that gross oil revenues that have accrued January to April is 1.23 trillion, compared to the prorated target for the period of 3.12 trillion. This represents just a mere 39%. That is for oil and gas revenue. On the other hand, non-oil taxes reported a performance of 92.6% as at April, compared to the budget target.
In speeding up the recovery process, more interventions are being deployed to boost non-oil exports and diversify revenue sources.
In diversifying our economy away from oil, and this visit has shown that there is a very large prospect for this diversification. People have expressed a lot of interest of coming to invest in Nigeria.
The capital market is being supported by investors within and outside the country.
For this project derives from the federal government of Nigeria's efforts to promote the development of a competitive, deep and liquid capital market supported by an enabling regulatory environment.
A market surveillance system is required to aid the regulator in in detecting and addressing market abuse as quickly as and efficiently as possible, and to proactively prevent major infractions.
While efforts are ongoing to ensure improved growth, particularly for MSMEs, the dwindling fortunes in the electricity sector is being addressed.
The discourse needed to be made very responsible, to be able to increase in their capacity.
The recent steep increase in the price of petrol, diesel, and even aviation fuel had adversely affected businesses in Nigeria. MSMEs continue to depend on gasoline and diesel for their businesses to survive. Given that we have an estimated 40 million MSMEs in the country, you can see clearly that there is indeed a need for the conversations to continue.
International Monetary Fund, IMF, in its latest growth forecast, believes Nigeria has no reason to doubt her growth trajectory.
And I think for us, we should not shy away from the issue of good policies mean better lives of people.
In Abuja, Benny Adams.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's conversation. Let's start off by introducing our guest to you. I'd like to welcome to this program Aderibibe Olomola. He's a professor of economics at the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, Ibadan. Thanks for being with us here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, let me also welcome to this program Mohammed Sani Bello, Professor of Accounting and Finance, Kaduna State University. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We are joined tonight by Dr. Emeka Okengwu, Development Economist and former consultant to the World Bank and the United Nations. Good to see you, Emeka.
Good evening, Nigerians.
All right. And then let me also welcome Niya Kishiju, who is Public Affairs and Financial Analyst. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you very much.
Right. Now, it's Tuesday Live, and as you know, at some point in time, you can join in the discussion in the studio, but when that time comes, we'll acquaint you with the procedure, we'll remind you of the terms and the conditions. For now, let's go straight to the issues at stake, the economic challenges, national priorities, and we'll put the very first question on this program to our guests here, and that has to do with what actually is the economic situation in Nigeria today. Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. The economic situation, we can look at it generally in terms of what is happening within the country and external influences. And then we can also look at it in terms of general analysis that people are doing. Generally, we must recognize the COVID-19 past 1 and 2 years and what the government has done to really tame it, and then all the policies that have been on. When we find out, and you also remember that we passed through a number of recessions, you find out that today, as we are analyzing the economy, we need to recognize that those efforts and policies of government in various areas are moving the economy in the right direction. As at Q1 2022, the economy has grown positively by 3.6%. And this is the cumulative effect of the various policy actions, fiscal policies, monetary policies, interventions, safety nets, intervention, and so on. This is one summary of it. But we, at the external level, we look at the global trend also, the downswing. In many economies, even developed economies, they are growing at a decreasing rate. In the case of Nigeria, we're growing at an increasing rate. But there are also problems in the aftermath of the COVID-19, of the increase in oil price generally. We find that in our own economy, in the domestic economy, we see rising inflation, we see rising cost of energy, and so on. And then we see various actions that government putting in place to tame this. We also see exchange rate. And I think this is what many people will be familiar with. We could talk about the exchange rate and all that. But we also need to see the actions of Nigerians, of citizens, and the actions of government in terms of public sector and the actions of the private sector. We need to see what the citizens are doing in response to government efforts.
Right. You know, the one challenge most people, laymen especially like me, have when you talk about growth in the economy. And the man says that, well, the citizen says, look, this growth, is it tangible? How do I appreciate a growth if the quality of my life has not improved? So sometimes it gets very difficult to say, look, I am spending more and my earning power is less, but I hear about growth in the economy.
Yeah. Now, we need to look at what is happening at the household level. Yes. Which is a microeconomic analysis.
Right.
Go into various sectors of the economy and then analyze what is happening in various sectors. We can look at even in the real sector. We look at what is happening in agriculture, the agricultural sector. The difference in the growth we are having in 2022 is not only that it is on the positive trend, 3.6, but it's broadening into various sectors. 2 or 3 years ago, when we were in recession, we find that some sectors are growing, agricultural sector, for example, whereas others are declining.
Okay.
Here, the growth in this one is broadening out in virtually all sectors except the oil sector. Okay. And the oil sector, you see the amount of external influence that is really curtailing efforts in that area. And I think we will get to all this as we discuss.
Okay, so let's turn to Professor Mohammed Sani Bello and well, put the same question. If we, as we hear that there is a global crisis, and many countries are facing the brunt of this crisis, and Nigeria is not exempt from it. But many citizens will say, well, let's talk about what's happening at home and how you can mitigate that first.
Thank you very much. I think there are two issues my senior colleague mentioned, which will require some kind of elaboration. And that has to do with, number one, the economy is growing, that is cumulatively, but the sectors that are really propelling that growth, they are not the real sector of the economy. And that is what explains what you see, in our various homes. For instance, the last time I checked, if you look at the communication and the digital economy sector, it's growing rapidly and is there. That is not the real sector. It is the social service sectors that are growing. And unless and until the real sector grows, you will not be able to see the real impact in our various homes. This is one. Secondly, we have what we call the 21st century corruption trend in Nigeria, which in a way tends to make nonsense of all the growth. Yes, there is growth, but then there is corruption in the system that is taking virtually every additional revenue that we make as a country is being diverted into various individuals' pockets. And why do we call it 21st century corruption? Even in the 70s there were corruptions. There were corruptions, but in the 21st, in the 70s, people, when they take money from either the government corpus or from wherever, they tend to invest it within. Some of them will, of course, build a house if they don't have one, and they will go and invest in farming activities. They will also for those who are socializing, they'll go and spend it in brothels and the rest, and money is in circulation within the country. This time around, when people remove money from, through corrupt means, they tend to either, convert it to dollar and then keep it in certain safes in their various homes, which removes the money from circulation, and they do not use the money for any productive activity that is going to generate employment. And again, some will even take it abroad to develop other economies. So this new corruption tendency is another reason why, despite the growth in the overall economy, you don't see the impact in our various homes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's go over to Dr. Emeka Okengwu, and easily the same question. And what's going on with the economy? Is this solely the result of global distress, or is it coupled with certain other factors which are domestic?
Very much real. I think we should look at the economy from three broad perspectives. The one you call your formal economy, the informal economy, and then your underground economy. And when you're talking about the formal economy, it's very easy, to look at your data statistics, and then, the growths and that Prof had earlier spoken about can be captured. However, when you start looking at the underground economy, which is where between the informal and the underground, this is actually where you have the real sector that Prof was also talking about, and this is where we have our greatest challenge. And in now trying to interrogate where these challenges are coming from, I also think we should be looking at three broad factors. Factor number one will be your population growth. Factor number two will be your infrastructure stock. And then factor number three will be your economic growth. Now, if you're not able to match these three factors, you might not be able to now have, what you call a best eye view of what your cross-cutting challenges could be. Against all this, you asked me about, external and internal factors. I think the greatest challenge we have to, and I'm sure that as we progress in this conversation, is going to be coming out very clearly, is the challenge of, climate change, climate mitigation. Now, a lot of the challenges we have today in our country is actually driven inadvertently by climate change. Okay, it is actually the silent killer. Yes, the COVID had come, it came as a global pandemic and all that. It has its own existential challenges, but I think the greatest challenge we face today, again, in also dealing with the challenge of climate change, is that we lack the proper statistics and data to even begin to now, compartmentalize and then begin to align or synergize, these three issues I've mentioned about. So right now, everybody claims that we are over 216 million and counting. We have about 65% of our population between the ages of 15 and 45. We are running right now very thin lines when it comes to our capacity to be able to generate jobs. We are also now faced with this problem of energy and all that. That could make sense when you're looking at it from a political perspective. But when you want to drill it down seriously, you begin to actually now see where the fault lines and the red lines are. Okay, it's easy for you to say, oh, we are growing at 2.3%, and you're talking about your formal economy, and that growth can be explained and determined. But again, if you're not able to get to show how that growth impacts, okay, on that young man who's been out of school and has no job, then you begin to now miss, the lines. So point I'm trying to make, so I don't get a lot of time, because as we're going to be progressing, I think the essential factors or challenges we have to our economy is simply the fact that we've not been able to, as a country, develop the actual data, okay, that can statistically show where we're standing with our underground economy, where we are with our informal, economy, and which trajectory, the formal economy is taking.
All right, thank you very much. As you say, we'll return to some of these issues and explore them in further detail. Let's go over to Chief Nia Kishiju, who is with us tonight, and get to hear his perspective on what's happening, the situation in the Nigerian economy today, and how this is being tackled from within.
Very much. I don't think we'll be saying anything different than what we've been talking about in the last so many years, and I'm talking about the first boom, the first oil and gas boom we experienced in Nigeria sometimes between 1972 and 1973 during the Arab-Israeli war. And since then, we've been experiencing this cycle of boom and bust and boom. Price of crude oil will go up, will make huge earnings within a short period. It falls, and of course, we go back to being despondent. That exactly is what we are suffering now, and it's principally because our developments historically have been pivoted on what I call a narrow developmental path. It's principally pivoted on the fortunes of crude oil. It's the performance of crude oil that determines how robust our economy is at any point in time. So if we're looking at issues at this time, we'll be looking at what the global market is talking about in terms of in terms of crude oil pricing and of course quantity, as it were. So it boils down. We have always known that crude oil is the major source of our foreign exchange. 80% up till sometimes 2 years ago, 80% of our foreign exchange is provided by crude oil and perhaps to some extent gas, and of course we are limited in terms of, perhaps until recently, in terms of industrialization, in terms of value added to our agricultural output and all that. So I don't think we are going to start saying anything new. Whatever we are experiencing now have been there, but I can say that in the last few years, I think there have been some sort of policy application that is also directing us, that had become a beacon of hope, in that developmental universe. And why do I say this? Especially from 2015, we have run into a storm of sorts in the economic universe. Crude oil prices fell from starting in the third quarter of 2014, and it continued like that into 2016. We went into a recession principally because of a crash in the price of crude oil, and we started coming out of that in 2017. We had a breather in 2018 where we're just getting momentum. In 2019, we had the coming of COVID-19. We survived COVID-19 more or less under 18 months, and then, of course, the Ukraine-Russian conflict started, with implication for imports of grains, that had impact on food inflation in Nigeria domestically, implication for energy cost and all that. So, principally, our universe is more or less dependent on global economy, as it were, because our economic products are actually determined in the international markets.
Okay. Except that, you see, again, in speaking about oil prices, even when the price of oil appreciates, it does not necessarily translate to good fortune for the country, does it?
It does until of recent. I mean, starting, don't forget the Udoji increase across board salary was naturally linked, to the windfall we made from increase in oil prices, and then since then, at every average every 2 years, we always had this experience with oil price increase. 1981, 1982, a barrel of crude oil went to $45, and we had everything more or less. Nigeria became even perhaps the paradise for most African countries, and we had many African countries, citizens of African countries coming into Nigeria. And of course, when the downturn, when we experienced the bust, everybody, we now started talking about Ghana must go and all that. So if we start tracking history, we will see that boom. Anytime price of crude oil went up, we experienced the boom. But of recent, we were expecting that boom, but unfortunately, we are also coming from a history of a mismanaged sector. In 2015, I remember that cash call deficiencies or unpaid cash call, to the joint venture was up to $5.6 billion. Now, what that tells me is that since NNPC at that time was owing joint venture partners up to $5.6 billion, it does mean that over the years there would have been no investment in new field, and because there have been no investment in new fields coming forward 6-7 years after that, we need to boost our production. There were no investment for us to link up to, to increase our rig counts, as it were. And then you now add that to pipeline vandalization, so much now that the Trans-Forcados pipeline that used to be the major pipeline, crude pipeline, to Forcados, has become the playground for vandals. Now most operators are now moving away to a new pipeline that is under the ground. Perhaps if we had a 6 meters deep underground pipeline built over 6, 7, 10 years ago, we will not be confronted with this challenge, of pipeline vandalization. So if we had up to even if it's just 2 million barrels a day that we're doing across $100 per barrel, our earnings would have exponentially increased. And of course, we will not be talking about these shortages in foreign exchange that had also led more or less to the depreciation of the naira going forward. And that has also been a pass-through, on products and services that is now reflecting in higher prices that are now, of course, aggregated in increase in inflation rates, as it were.
All right. Well, in addition to the discussions in the studio, we have a couple of reports. Let's start off with the first tonight. This one is from Lagos by Michael Lale.
On the economic index of inflation across the globe, Nigeria is down the ladder with inflation rates presently put at 17.71% on a year-on-year basis in May. It is an encouraging statistic, but while the country's huge potential is constrained, is due to factors ranging from limited capacity to exports, weak import substitutes, and lack of stamina by the naira to compete favorably on the global stage.
Other forms of intervention that we like to see are things around our trade policy. If the government can also intervene by reviewing some of the import tariff on some of the critical items around energy, around food processing, around equipment, the levies and taxes, if there can be a review.
In the face of this, Nigeria is re-strategizing to meet up with its production quota of 1.8 million barrels per day, while ironically projecting to climb up to 6 trillion naira for subsidy payable on fuel this year.
We should be able to protect the pipelines. We should be able to allow for improved production. Should we have improved production of crude today, we are going to achieve a couple of things. One, we're going to have a stabilization of our foreign exchange reserve. We're going to have a moderation in the depreciation of the local currency and possibly a strengthening of the local currency because of the high crude prices.
From anchor borrower, N-Power, and series of interventions to stimulate micro and small medium-scale enterprises, government has responded positively, but experts say weak physical space in terms of limited resources has slowed down growth.
I think the economic team and the monetary policy team needs to sit down. There must be policy alignment for us to be able to see, positive growth. positive impact that we all look out for.
As a matter of urgency, experts say initiatives that can boost the strength of the naira can change the narrative.
We have an inflow of $29-30 billion diaspora remittances annually. What we are counting officially is about $6 billion now. So why can't we harness that?
Another area of tremendous growth is in infrastructure, with the success story in the rail subsector a reference point. But experts say more efforts spearheaded by public-private partnership will add value to increasing capacity to exports. In Lagos, Michael Alaleye.
Right, back here in the studio, Professor Olomola. Let's look at inflation in Nigeria. Some would say it's man-made. But this is real in terms of goods, which are the basics, for instance, and you find them going beyond the reach of many more citizens, even when you do have growth. The other part of it is when we come to manufacturing, and how much growth have we witnessed in that?
Thank you very much. Inflation has been a major concern, and the Monetary Authority recently has been trying to tame inflation. If you look at the Development Plan, Midterm Plan 2021 to 2025, inflation is estimated to be around 13% around this time up to 2025. But when the implementation started, we talk about Ukraine-Russian war and all that happened, the depreciation of the exchange rate and the pass-through into the economy that also fueled inflation. I think what is to be done is that when this kind of fortuitous circumstances came up, you need to come with actions. And you see in the last monetary policy meeting, you can see that the MPR has been raised to 13%. To curtail inflation. You know, you keep managing inflation and you keep seeing what is happening in the economy. Food inflation in particular is critical. You see what happened to this Ukraine. These are areas where fertilizer is being exported, and you see in Nigerian agriculture, if it's to be modernized, you need to increase the use of fertilizer, and as energy costs is increasing, you find out that the price of these inputs are increasing. So for some people that are net producers, they are gaining from this. Because if you want to buy a piece of yam now, you know what it means. And if you see the sellers there and the producers, they're smiling. But when we look at the urban areas, the net consumers, particularly those that are underemployed and so on, and those whose real income will be affected, then they face a different scenario. So it's a mismatch. So the overall responsibility, therefore, is to tame it generally. And this recent monetary policy of the last 2 weeks that tend to see the supply of money by increasing the MPR to 30% is one way. But we need to see where we are in this analysis. In the last 3 or so months, we look at what's happening in the political arena. And some of the things that we feel are untenable, we have artificial factors pushing them. Look at the Australia, for example. We talk about the underground market. I think this is where there's need for all Nigerians to really come to a point whether we continue to allow underground operators to manage a foreign exchange or to allow monetary authorities to manage a foreign exchange. And I have never seen a country where dollar is not produced, yet it's sold in every corner of the country. I think we as citizens of Nigeria, we need to see how we control underground activities. And under in the last few months, you can see the intensity of political activities, and you can see the release of funds into the economy. And I'm not surprised that this has to be curtailed through monetary policy, tightening monetary policy as it's being.
Yes, but if politics is bringing about this,
yes,
what about the regulatory authorities? If suddenly, because political activity is heightened, the economy becomes awash with not even naira.
This is exactly what the monetary policy. You know, the monetary policy rate has been increased by 150 basis points during the last monetary policy meeting of the CBN, and then raising the MPR to 13%. It used to be 12% for almost 6 or so years or so. Now it's been increased. This is part of the effort to curtail it. But then, how do you control this? Way, as Nigerian citizens, we need to talk to ourselves. How do you, when you are controlling this through monetary policy, how do you control the activities of individuals who will want to give money to induce people to vote and so on? So we need to come with some regulatory actions to make sure that vote trading that is coming up, that is allow money to flow around, is really brought under serious control.
Professor Sani Bello, the small farmer in the village is not responsible for this. He doesn't in any way engage in anything to do with foreign exchange, and this is basically the actions of the elite in society. So if you say you need to curtail, who are we talking to?
Well, actually, this is taking us back to what I refer to as the 21st century corruption. You see, the trend now is that all monies obtained through corrupt means, the dollar is the means of keeping it. As we said previously, people go and invest it. Now, because of the regulatory authorities and anti-corruption bodies that try to, once they can identify what you obtain through corrupt means, they can collect it back. So people now find it convenient to be keeping dollars. Such corrupt monies are now kept in dollars, in bedrooms, in individual safes. So this is what is happening, and I think unless and until we get some kind of reorientation, because as we are today, whether you have it or you don't have it, you are not happy. Everybody is going through stress, and nobody feels scared, and it is simply on account of this. So I think Prof has said it, but what I will differ from is blaming it on political activities. It's not about political activities. Some people are not politicians, and they have nothing to do with politics. It is general trend. Even to keep some money now, so somebody who has a bonus, maybe from his employment, a legitimate bonus, rather than keep the money in naira or invest it in the local economy, somebody will just say, I want it to be in dollar.
That would be
because
a
of the stability of the currency.
fraction of the people.
No.
Because the earning power is
when everyone is doing it, when it becomes a general behavior, and you aggregate it, it has a lot of impact.
Why would someone who earns 30,000 naira a month, for instance,
no,
decide
to buy naira? You see, we have some people who earn legitimate income, as workers, either through bonus or the size of their income, because of the distortion in the economy. You find somebody who graduates same year with you, I mean, but because he's in a particular industry working, he's earning 10 times.
Politics, for instance.
Not politics.
Because it's been said that politics is the fastest growing. Politics is the fastest growing industry.
You know, there are organizations. You know, in the private sector and both in the private sector and the public sector, where people get paid. You know, in terms of salaries and emoluments, chunk of money, and rather than keep the money at least in the local currency, anytime you want to use it, it's your money. People will just go and they buy $10,000, $5,000 just to keep. I mean, that kind of psychology of people wanting to keep money in dollar. I mean, dollarizing the economy thereby is a real menace, and we have to look at that, not just to blame it on the politicians. Politicians, all the political activities are seasonal. You know, after this primaries now, between now and next election and probably the start of a new government, you would see people spending dollar on political activities. So there is an issue which I think we have to look at, and making additional remarks on the issue of the external factors affecting the economy. This Russian-Ukraine war is not a small factor. It has a lot of impact. The fertilizer, we get a lot of it, from Ukraine, and then even the food supply, gas and oil supply. Previously, the Europe was comfortable, so any excess can find its way to Nigeria and to some developing countries. Not any longer. So that is also a real issue.
Dr. Kengu, speaking of the Russia-Ukraine war, some say if perhaps Nigeria had its act together, this would have been when to reap benefits in two aspects: gas supply, for instance, and wheat. What do you think?
Discussing the Russian-Ukrainian war and its effect on Nigerian economy is soul-rendering, especially with the commodities in view. Remembering that we as a country, in the past 15-20 years, we've been progressively, on a yearly basis, year on year, we are flaring, burning into the air with its consequences, 2.2 billion cubic feet of gas. It's also a shame that we as a country that has over 36 million hectares of land that is arable, most of them can grow everything that we are bringing in from Ukraine, from the sunflowers that give you the oil, to the wheat, to the maize, to the corn, to every other grain. And then we are, as a country, we can actually sit down with over 60 or more research agencies, over 2,300 research outputs, and we are talking about the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war on our food chain. And this is even worsened by the fact that as a country we have increased our strategic food reserves from 200,000 to I think about 400,000 capacity now. What has gone wrong? And this is why I say that we might be focusing on the wrong aspect and now trying to classify or interrogate our economy against what happens in the formal systems. The first question we should be asking is, how many people does our formal economy engage? What are we, calculating our GDPs against? And then how many people are in the informal economy or the real sector? Prof had talked about politics being a seasonal thing. Unfortunately, I also beg to differ with him. It is not a seasonal thing. Okay, politics never ends in Nigeria. It starts from that primary and ends when a new administration comes. So the spending hasn't stopped with the primaries. What has happened is that the floodgate has opened in this country in the full glare of people. A lot of monies were being given, a lot of monies were being shared. I thought, that they would have set some standards, would have made some very important, public announcements or show of force by trying to, stop that trend. We saw the security agencies, visiting one or two of those places, and that was all that was heard about it. Unfortunately, it is going to go on until the general elections, which again is a long time away. That expenditure is going to be happening on a daily basis. It hasn't stopped. It won't stop. And then every other thing that we do in Nigeria is not about administration, but fortunately about politics. So it is all about politics, because most 80% of those we recruit, into public offices are done, by political affiliations. Not very much, by their carrying capacities. So politics is all. And politics is where all our policies are also derived from. Okay, so for me, you asked me about Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine should be a challenge to every well-meaning Nigerian, okay, who we should ask ourselves, who is supposed to be giving who? Are we supposed to be giving to Ukraine with all their challenges, climate challenges, and us that has no major, climate challenge, no major natural disaster, no major arable land? We don't need a lot of fertilizers. And it's even worse when we're thinking about that we're importing fertilizers, from the same Ukraine too. Now, the prices of these fertilizers are out of reach because they must be discounted in dollar. And because, again, Professor Derigbe had spoken about, the people who are now operating. And again, I don't know how true it is. I think it better be a lie, because they had actually come out to proffer to the CBN that they have solutions on how they could stabilize, the dollar. This is coming from, this underground economy, or underground players or practitioners. So I think what we should do is to please look at three, like I started in my opening. There are three components we must look at, and then look at what is the most critical. In this formal economy that we're talking about, where we are now, juxtaposing growth, challenges, how many people, let's put numbers, okay, probably a maximum of 200,000. But you have a population of 200 and something million. A lot of them in the informal sector. What are they doing? What are they contributing? How are they contributing to, the social infrastructure development? These are the key questions. At least if we get this right, if we interrogate these things, as painful as it might be, yes, government has done well. Nobody can take that away from them. We must give them that kudos. And there is no government that ever comes into play to want to not do well for their people. This government has done all it can. But the question will be, in doing all it can, has it been able to do what can be able to stop this hemming that we're talking about? Somebody was talking about, our GDP, to debt. Okay, there's nothing wrong with borrowing, but there's everything wrong with not that debt you're putting into your economy not being able to also show up your revenues, because that way you now have two major challenges. Okay, you can't pay the debt and you're not generating revenue. Now, in between, this is where agriculture should come in. Somebody had mentioned agriculture, but everybody is also moving away from the mining sector. Now, we have our services, and what with these services, can we really talk about people now having the disposable capital to be able to afford them? And this is where the frustration begins to grow deeper. We are talking about everybody talking about refineries, crude oil. People are moving away from crude oil and they are moving into, CNGs, they are moving into, renewables, they are moving into so many other, even air. People are driving their cars with electric. Cyril? And I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about, smaller countries in Africa doing the same thing. And with all the whole sunlight we have we been able to map, our solar systems? Have we been able to map our waterways? Have we been able to look at these alternatives that can actually begin to, address the issues of this major bulk that is in this informal sector? I think this is where the primary challenge is, if you ask me, sir.
All right, let's flip over to Nia Kishiju, and this time around, since we're on the subject of energy and the contributory factor to the vagaries of our economy, how has energy or the lack of it affected, and how has the administration responded to it?
I think we should also go back to some of the bits I submitted earlier, especially when we talked about our boom and bust. The whole thing still revolved around energy. Unfortunately, anytime we experienced a boom, we refused to invest as appropriate. Between 1999 and 2014, I recall that in 1999, a barrel of crude oil was $9. And over the years, it started the price increase. We started witnessing price increase gradually. And then exponentially between 2004 and 2013, in fact 2014 thereabouts, when it moved up to $140 per barrel in a particular quarter. I think quarter one, Now, essentially, what did we do with the money, the dollars accumulated over that period, over a period of about 13 years precisely? So much that in the face of a crash from the third quarter of 2014, the economy was in a state of disarray, as it were, and that led us, of course, to the 2016 recession. So it's principally about energy. Unfortunately, when we had that kind of money too, we were not doing anything about refineries. The four major refineries, we have two refineries in Port Harcourt. We have one in Warri and one in Kaduna. All those refineries were more or less comatose. They were not operating, So by 2014, 2015, the oil sector especially was more or less non-functional. We were just depending on production taken from the ground and carrying abroad. And of course, price had also crashed. So because we didn't have functional refineries, we had resorted since 2005 thereabout, we had resorted 90%, to importing our white products, as they call it, especially the PMS, premium motor spirit, what they otherwise called petrol, the one we use for our vehicles and all that. And again, because of the shortage of foreign exchange, dollar especially, whatever may be our argument here, either in terms of politicians, Nigerians using dollars or converting dollars into a store of value now, I still believe that we have huge challenges. It was because we had huge challenges with the supply side of our foreign exchange that we have found ourselves in this difficult situation. And it's basically because we did not appropriately invested when we're supposed to invest. Because when you make earnings as a sovereign entity, it is the appropriateness of your investment that would, of course, give you returns that will keep you going. And that was why we had this sovereign wealth fund. And until recently, we didn't appropriately, invest. It is recently that we know that through the presidential initiative on fertilizer, the sovereign wealth fund authority could invest, in reviving our about 33 moribund fertilizer plants. Recently, we now know that there was a need to rehabilitate the refineries, the Port Harcourt refineries, especially with the hope that other refineries, of course, will come on stream. The reality of our situation is that we have now had to depend on importation of white products, PMS as it were, and because we had shortage of supply of dollars, it is only the NNPC that has the capability of spending, assessing foreign exchange to import dollars, to import PMS, and therefore it now also impinged on the bottom line of the NNPC itself, because the market is regulated. I chuckle because I still can't come to terms with the fact of that regulation, especially when you are dependent on import, as it were. Perhaps if we were producing in country, perhaps we could be regulating, because we could control certain aspects, certain dynamics of the production environment, of our energy, as it were. But we are importing 100% as it is, and no marketer is involved in that importation, because they also claim that they cannot access foreign exchange to be involved or to embark on the importation. So I think going forward, what is essential to us is to make sure that our refineries are back on stream. Yes, Dr. Okongwe had also mentioned that the world is moving away from crude oil, and that's the reality. And there is a need, of course, for us, once we start our reading in terms of new earnings, to start looking at new sectors and other opportunities. But again, some of us would insist that as of this time, this is our resources and this is what we can depend on, and there's a need for us not to just juice it, but to appropriately invest. And this is where I give kudos to what the CBN is doing, especially with the RT raised to 200 billion FX scheme, or to the 100 policy on production and productivity. Those are targeted programs, targeted at the private sector to encourage and incentivize the private sector to expand, as it were. 5 billion naira a maximum, as it were, maximum investment in brownfield projects, and we have seen about 48 projects of such, coming on board in the last 6 months. I can talk about the Duchess Hospital. People who had heard about the vice president's surgery of late, being conducted in that hospital. We can tell Nigerians that particular hospital is a product, of this 100 by 100 policy, because the whole idea is to increase production and productivity in Nigeria, so that we reduce our dependency on importing things that we can produce in country, And of course, in doing that, we'll be able to conserve dollars. We'll also be able to produce items we can also export, so that we can, of course, earn and increase the dollar supply threshold, as it were. And in doing all this, we are also creating jobs, so that those individuals that Cyril is talking about, would also have opportunity to be gainfully employed. And of course, we'll also be able to move people away from the informal sector that Dr. Okongo is talking about here into the formal sector, so that people can also know the how do I want to put it, the guarantee of their earnings. They are not open to the vagaries, of existence and survival every day. So when you have the manufacturing sector booming, and we must also give kudos to this government. I have a particular data that I found very interesting, that in the face of all these challenges, Nigeria recorded the highest possible manufacturing output in 2021, valued at $61 billion. Now, that is impressive, given the kind of challenges we have had to contend with. And now, this may even be a kind of good fortune, for Nigerians. This shortage of dollars, as it were. Why? You now have companies, now intensifying backward integration, using more of local products, as their cost of
we will talk of this seeming advantage which you say when we return in the next segment of this program. But for now, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, hopefully the phone lines will be open and we can get a few thoughts from those watching this program. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
one of us is affected by the circulation of illicit small arms and light weapons in our communities. Our beloved ones, breadwinners, farmlands and livelihoods are lost. Our homes are lost. Even young children are not left out. These weapons cause pains and sufferings, devastating our societies. It is our collective duty as every Nigerian stakeholder, religious or community leaders, traditional rulers, or civil societies, and at every level of governance to work with security agencies to stop the proliferation of illicit arms. We must shun the trafficking or possession of illicit arms. We must reject any inducement to help in its transportation. We must report all suspected individuals or groups involved in the smuggling or stockpiling of small arms and light weapons or illicit arms to the nearest security agency for prosecution, as our government is very determined to end this menace. Let us come together and work for safe and secure Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
Like I said, I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportation. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Right, thanks for staying with us. This segment is where we put out the numbers and you can call in and be part of this discussion. And as we say every Tuesday, if you call in and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also like to encourage you to go straight to the point, keep it short, straight and simple. And we say don't waste too much time on greetings. Hello, just a simple hello is okay. Already we have a caller on the line. Ololade from Kwara. Go right ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Go ahead.
Yes. I want to appreciate the various submissions from various speakers. It's so interesting. It shows that there are a lot of abundant resources and advantages in this country if it's properly announced. And again, it's always good for us to save for any day, which we have not been doing. If the economy is properly managed, we will not have the challenges that we are having economically. That's just my submission this evening. I'm Ololade from Kwara.
All right. Thank you very much. And, well, keep the calls coming through and you can air your views. We have another report at this point in time. Let's get to see this one. It's coming in from Kaduna, and it is by Dauda Mohammed.
Recent challenges of COVID-19 and the ongoing war in Ukraine have impacted negatively on the global economy, pushing prices of essential goods and services out of the reach of common man. All these have contributed to reduce the expected revenue accrued to states in the country.
Well, the issue of those limitations have to do with the fiscal deficit, source of funds for running administration and other issues that have to do with government. Government in Nigeria is the major funder of projects, major promoter of the economy, and the largest employer of labor.
Despite challenges of funding, the urban renewal program of the Kaduna State government has impacted positively on the social services of the state. Hitherto, deplorable roads and infrastructure have been reconstructed, with new bridges linking up and opening new communities, fast-tracking development.
And even with all these challenges, at least at the federal level, government is paying salaries, government is discharging its responsibilities to some extent, and the system has not grounded. So we can say kudos to the government. With all these challenges, government is able to operate. So these are at least some part of the achievement, we can say, but the challenges are there everywhere.
The truth of the matter is that we are probably the ones consuming PMS at the lowest price, probably globally. There's nowhere else you go to that you find the kind of prices we are having now.
We have other natural resources that we don't harness. The harnessment of such natural resources will give the state government ample opportunity to choose those raw materials toward development. They could export it to other countries for exchange, and they can also use them as raw materials for production.
Economic analysts advise that government at all levels should explore new ideas and sectors for revenue generation to be able to meet up with their financial obligations for now and the future. Dauda Mohammed.
All right, we have a caller on the line, Emmanuel, calling in from Oka. Hello, Emmanuel, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I think yes. Can I talk now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, if we're talking about COVID-19. Hello?
Yes, go on.
Okay, I want to know the measures the government are putting on about the prevention vaccines. Whether is it anywhere now, is it down Noka here? Hello?
All right, Emmanuel. Yes, your question is about the Presidential Steering Committee and its activities in Oka. I can understand and appreciate that. Tonight, the link we have with COVID-19 in our discussion tonight is how it has affected the Nigerian economy. If you do recall, it started off as the Presidential Task Force, and if you recall the lockdown, which was not peculiar to Nigeria, but to other parts of the world, and the fact that the entire globe virtually ground to a halt. International travel was also affected. So it's the impact of that on the economy, the world economy, and Nigeria's economy as well, and the fact that the government had to produce palliatives for many of the citizens. Recall how it affected agriculture. And that's one other aspect we want to talk about tonight, because we also have talked about the war in Ukraine. And if the war in Ukraine has had a huge impact on the economy of the world, we also have an internal challenge here, a war of a different kind, which is also putting strains on the economy, particularly agriculture. And that's what I'd like Professor Bello to talk about next.
Thank you. If you see the Ukraine, we've been getting a lot of fertilizer supply from Ukraine. And that is a major input in our agricultural activities. Now, that has been hampered by the ongoing war. Similarly, Ukraine is supplier of the input or some of the ingredients that fertilizer is made from to some other countries like Morocco, where we also get fertilizer, and that has stopped. So we are saying that one of the most important external factors affecting the Nigerian economy today is that war. Then, but here locally, we have the spread of insecurity, which has stopped many farmers from going accessing their farmlands. And where they do so, they do it under very strange fear, or under a kind of arrangement between them and those who, and the terrorists and the bandits that ordinarily would have stopped them from farming or cultivating their farms. They will now ask them to say, look, do the cultivation. They will get the inputs, how they get it, they don't care. How they, cultivate the farms, they don't care. But after you cultivate, during harvest, you have to set aside a certain quantity of what you produce and give to the bandits. And this thing is happening in many states, especially the northwest and north central part of Nigeria. So this is what is happening, and we are saying that aligned with issue of fertilizer supply, which is being hampered by the war in Ukraine, there is also the local issue, which is bedeviling agricultural production, that is the terrorism and banditry.
Right. Back to the phone lines now. We have Solomon calling in from Port Harcourt. Solomon, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, Paul.
Good evening.
So my contribution is like a question, and I want to address the question to Mr. or Dr. Emeka Okingwu. I'm directing my question to Dr. Emeka Okingwu. Please, what is the statistical situation in Nigeria in terms of economic performance on or rather before COVID-19 and before Ukrainian war? How is our economy performing so as to justify the fact that people are now facing hardship in our economy presently than before? So we need a kind of gradation, statistical presentation of the performance of the economy as we move from the past 20 years, for example, to the present time. And then we do a kind of government performance appraisal. Government performance appraisal in the sense that some government in question perform better than the other. And if it is so, why are some government performing better than the other as we move along the ladder up to where we are today? So that is why I want to present this matter to Emeka Okingwu, so as to tell us the reason why we are suffering more now than before.
All right. Thanks. The man heard you, and so it's over to Dr. Emeka Okingwu.
What has happened is that there has been what you call population explosion. And against this population explosion, like 20 years ago, you didn't have as many people in Nigeria as you have them today. Now, you didn't also in these 20 years plan for the infrastructure that can be able to cater for this your population explosion. Remember that when I started my opening, I said that the major problem we have in Nigeria is that we've not been able to create some credible data source that can be able to aid us with our planning. So I think it is a failure of, first and foremost, generating the proper data. Secondly, being able to now plan both proactively and reactively. Now, every government is a continuum. Now, you might be able to talk about the headship of that government vis-a-vis the policies that they operate. But Nigeria has operated only one constitution over these 20 years. And anything and everything government does is guided by the provisions of that constitution. Apart from maybe one or two intervention programs that every or each administration will be able to, put into place. So it might be difficult to statistically, say to you, oh, this government performed, much more better than this government, and that this amount of suffering was a lot worse in this administration than this, but you can be able to present scenarios. Now, it is very obvious and clear that because of this struggle, scarce resources, we have gone through COVID, we have gone through recessions, a lot of people have lost jobs, our exchange rate has not been very, very stable. Things have not gone as much as we expect them to have done. Because in the first place, remember, first and foremost, like I said, that we have had a lull in infrastructure development that transcends probably 3, 4, 5 administrations. Now, part of the major problems we had was that we stopped development planning in Nigeria. Okay, and some part of this was created by the interventions or military incursions in our systems. Remember that we are just coming out of these things, and most military governments, by their nature, do not operate economic development programming. Okay, so this is one very major problem. Secondly, we now have, politicians or people in public office, okay, that are no longer, I want to be very, very careful with what I'm saying, because you don't also say things on national television that you're not able to back with facts. But so far, with what it is we're seeing, it seems that there's a disconnect, okay, between those, in public offices, based on even, the outputs of our investigating agencies, and how some of these people, not all of them, have abused public trust. Now, for every abuse that you experience, remember that money that was taken away, that project that was not done, should have impacted on the lives of people directly. So I don't think it would be fair for us to start, saying, oh, within this period, you must be able to look at every period. Every administration had its challenges. This is what I'm trying to say to you, my brother, from Port Harcourt. Every administration in Nigeria that has existed have had this and has had ways they're able to address it. But somehow it is becoming very clear and difficult for us not to see, okay, that banditry, which again can be as a result, like I said earlier, of a lot of various factors. Okay, it could be climate change, it could be population explosion, it could be even, the lack of infrastructure, it could be lack of social services, it could be even lack of a health system that can be able to provide some kind of psychiatric or psychological support to Nigerians. So it's a myriad of factors. But I think the greatest challenge we have, which I think you should take home, is that we are growing, not at a rate economic growth can be able to carry.
All right, thank you so much. And well, the calls keep coming in. Yes, you keep those calls coming through, and I guess we'll respond to the issues as much as possible. Let's go over to dear Keshiju. Well, the matter of agriculture and insecurity, the challenges are being exacerbated by the fact that not as many people are going to the farms anymore, and coupled with the known fact that agriculture is still being practiced in what can best be described as a pristine manner.
Well, the pristine manner, it's our culture, and whatever we will have to do, we'll have to we have to anchor it on our culture. So if we talk about subsistence farming, that had been the historical way we've been engaging as a country, as a culture in agriculture. We can only build on that, and I think that is where I want to give kudos to the CBN through its Anchor Borrowers program. To a large extent, I've been able to begin the process of transforming our subsistence farming, into a near organized formal farming. And I'm consciously, deliberately not using the word mechanized farming. I think as we go into this formalization of our farming agricultural processes, we will naturally transit into mechanized farming. There's no way you can jump, right from that subsistence farming that we had always known about, and we have seen various governments try to apply mechanized farming straight, into the mix, into the milieu, as it were. And we've also seen how disappointing those project interventions have been. So now that we had a Hancock Burras program targeting the farmers in the village and homesteads, as it were, and of course now gradually translating them into the formal sector, the next program that I have been following is the mechanization program. I think through the agricultural credit scheme or something like that, with an idea of farming out the federal government acquiring tractors, and farming out the use and lease of these tractors to organized farmers in the private sector, and of course those who are also under the Hancock Burras program. I understand this program is being done in conjunction with the government of Brazil and all that. So I know that the program is on its way along that line. I am confident that because we have now been able to formalize some bit of our subsistence farming, we have a strong ground, to build. And let me quickly also intervene in the Port Harcourt man's question. We talk about quality of life. Whatever the analogy I want to quickly give is the analogy of a household. A household that was earning ₦1 million, for instance, in a year, and all of a sudden you find yourself in bad times and you are now earning 200,000 naira a year. The quality of life will definitely be different. In 2014, we're earning an average of 50-something billion dollars, from crude oil alone. In fact, in 2011, we earned about 68 billion, not sure, but above $60 billion, from crude oil earnings. But in 2016, we earned about $16 billion. In 2017, about $20 billion. And it goes on like that, 34 billion, 36 billion. When you add all together, you've not been able to earn up to $200 billion, between 2016 and 2021, as it were. So and of course I said that we relied on crude oil principally for our foreign exchange, and that will also reflect in our foreign reserve. We reflect on the kind of money, the kind of dollar foreign exchange available for companies, manufacturing companies to import raw materials and all that. So when you have this kind of limitations, of course it will impact on the standard of your existence or living.
Fine. Let's quickly get back to the phones. We have Bernard calling in from Kano, who's been waiting for a while. Hello, Bernard. Thanks for staying on.
Yeah,
you can go ahead.
We are economic challenges in Nigeria, and that is what you people are discussing. And let's take a look at far back. If you look at economic of this country, is better compared to this administration. Okay, one, the failures of our economic in this country start from the balance of importation of food. Because before you could ban importation of fruits,
Hello, Bernard. Oh dear, we lost that call just as we were beginning to. Bernard, if you can hear me, you're still watching this program, do try to call in again. We'll be on the lookout. As soon as you get through again, we'll just take your call. We really would want to get that input. Thank you. All right. So here we are with these challenges in agriculture, for instance, and yes, there have been interventions in that sector as well. But some people would like to think that. Hello. Okay, let's take this call from Shola, who's calling in from Ibadan, and then we'll revert to Professor Olomola. Shola from Ibadan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm actually impressed with what I've been hearing for some time now. But I would like to put a question through to one of the speakers in the house tonight. who was talking about political issues, not the problem of Nigeria. Let us be realistic here. I believe that an economy that is diverse is an economy that is born to grow. When you have an oil-based economy where everyone believes that it is only from crude oil we can generate revenues, then that economy is heading for doom. Now, talking about politicians here now, I'm sorry to say this, don't quote me wrong, I'm not trying to witch hunt anybody or anyone. But the truth is, when you have politicians getting funds for 100 million and all that, those kind of money could be invested in other aspects of the economy, in terms of agriculture, mining, like someone said, and a lot of other aspects that we have not even looked into at all. And when you have a diverse economy, realistically, you would do one thing that is very important even to the incoming generation, which is creation of employment. And once you have people who are employed, the truth is the rate of insecurity would reduce. When you are talking about insecurity, who are these people fostering insecurity? The people who are not employed, who once they are called upon, come and do this for me, I will give you so amounts. They tend to fall for that trap. Because of what? Because they don't have a means of livelihood. Please, all I just want to say is, there is only one issue we have in this country. Once we start to think about others with the fear of God, once we start to consider others and not just considering ourselves, individual selves, this will lead to diversification, whether we like it or not. That is the truth. Someone on the show was talking about the economy being based on crude oil and political issues also affecting the economy, and another person was saying we shouldn't capitalize on politicians and all that. But the truth is bitter. We have to do what is right to get what is right from God. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Shola. And we'll take it up from that point and take it straight to the table of Professor Olomola. Now it's coming back again, and the question of agriculture and insecurity, and these also, some would like to say, have combined to shave off just a little bit, just that bit, off the gains that the various interventions have brought to the sector.
Yeah, thank you very much. Agriculture is very important, especially if you look at the transformation that has been happening in the sector since 2011. And a lot of interventions have gone into it. Even in the aftermath of the COVID, you can see interventions in terms of economic sustainability plan, in terms of infusion of financing by the CBN, and government interventions to make sure that farmers obtain even free interest loans during that time, 2020-2021, and that was part of what had sustained the recovery from recession, even the growth that we are having now. I do not. Everybody is probably thinking about what can be done to tackle the effect of probably security on agribusiness. And I remember even the Federal Ministry of Agriculture came up with an initiative in terms of what they call agro-rangers. Agro-rangers going into rural semi-urban areas where there seems to be disturbance of agricultural business activities to stabilize activities activities in that area. But this is also an area where the issue of climate change that we raised earlier on had been very important. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture, in addition to the financing that the CBN is bringing into the sector, the FMAD, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, has actually been promoting a number of innovations, including the agricultural mechanization that a colleague talked about the other time. And so actually this idea that subsistence farming is a culture, I think we're forgetting about that. And the idea in the last 8 years is to move away from that kind of perception that we need to rely on culture and so on. No, in the spirit of transforming the sector and getting even educated people to be involved, in terms at various stages of production or in the value chain, agriculture has gone beyond subsistence. But in terms of climate change, I think what is also being introduced is a climate smart agriculture, to rely on solar energy. You see what is happening in terms of fuel cost now, and even the cost of fertilizer and so on, and energy cost generally for those producing seeds and so on. The reliance on solar energy has been part of the innovation in the last 3 or 4 years, and even development partners have been contributing in this area. And this is area where diversification of agricultural budgets or interventions have been making some effects. And we need to diversify this. We need to let this be replicated in various areas. I've been bringing climate smart energy, solar driven pumps for irrigation to boost agricultural production, especially cereals production. And this is what has been happening in the area of rice. And as the expansion of rice production was going on in the last 4 years before COVID and so on, the policy of government is by this time to reduce the foreign exchange going into rice imports. And but for the COVID-19 pandemic, by now we'll have reached a stage where it would not have been necessary to spend foreign exchange on rice import, for example. I will have gotten foreign exchange in other areas, and the depreciation we are witnessing now will not have been as ravaging as it is now. So in terms of this security, agro-rangers are going into it, and then the development of value chains to make sure that the private sector, usually we talk about government, people forget that this dichotomy between government and others is a misnomer, and that is part of the misunderstanding, that even in terms of communication and even in terms of what you are reading in the press, the idea is not to say these are the people and the other group is the government. The government since 1999 we are running democracy. Right. And all of us, everybody has a responsibility. It appears that citizens feel that they don't have a responsibility. They don't have a responsibility to produce. They don't have a responsibility to comply with rules and regulations. So that if you say this is the, for example, foreign exchange allocated to this, they get the foreign exchange, but they don't use it to invest or to do what the CBN earmarks that for. Rather, they use it to exchange and keep the foreign exchange and cause artificial problem in the economy. I think there's need to curb all this deviation from rules and regulations.
Right. We'll consider that as well. But let's get back to the phones now. And Regal from Port Harcourt is calling in. Hello. Go ahead.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
I hear from all of you. But I have to go straight to the point. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The real problem of Nigeria economy, I'm writing on the program, the book on it. Nigeria, we all know that Nigeria was agrarian in nature, the structure of economy. But today, everybody have already diversified from the agriculture and other things. But if I can make a point, if our politicians who even to our money can invest in aviation industry, like several times I have been in Rwanda, I see some changes that impact they already made in aviation industry. That is an input we can make to make more foreign earning. And we should enact a law that any person working in this country will be paid in our currency. Like I can see in the television there, that our coach, one of our coaches, they are yet to be paid and it's in dollar. We're supposed to, it cannot be maybe tell me that you go and work in UK. They are going to pay you in another currency. You are not working in America tomorrow. They are going to pay you in another currency. Then you are not going to work in China. They will pay you in another currency. They maintain their country currency. So if we make a law, avoid paying people in foreign exchange when you are working in this country, I think we should have some reserve. Then another thing that the only way to save all this kind of insecurity in this country is by creating employment. And also we the youth, especially the parents, should also talk to their children how to invest in agriculture. Many youths of today, so I will use this word, are lazy. They want to be on that white collar job. Let us be more entrepreneurial, be more creative, be more creative to think of what we can do to make the country better. Not everybody depending on government to produce jobs. Even in America.
Hello, Regal. Okay, well, you just about made the point about what direction to go in, and as we begin to wind down, let's consider how. Yes, some gains have been made, but then the thinking is it could still have been better if the country had been proactive. We talked about what we've done with gas. If we hadn't been doing that, now that Russia, Ukraine are having the issues, all those countries in Europe could look to Nigeria for supply of gas, and that would be to a big advantage. And the same thing when I hear these days that bread is no longer the food for the common man, and that's as a result of wheat. And it's been said that Nigeria has arable land. It could have been a powerhouse in the production of wheat, and this would have cushioned the effects of the Ukraine-Russia war of Nigeria. So,
yes, I think the last speaker made mention of issue relating to unemployment, and this is one of the major issues bedeviling the Nigerian economy. This unemployment arises, to my mind, from two issues. Number one, the kind of education system we are having, whereby we emphasize on certificates, university certificate, as opposed to skills, which you will probably get in the polytechnics and in some other technical and vocational institutions. This is one. Secondly, the population. Those who are going into universities or tertiary institutions and graduate, and who will be looking forward to get a job. If you look at the growth, there is a huge gap between that growth in population of those who will be looking for a job and then the available industries or organization where those people can be employed. Now, related to this is the complete mismatch between what those who are in university or tertiary institution study and the requirements in the outside, that is in the job market. I can give you an example. Up to tomorrow, when you get somebody who is good in plumbing, he never has problem with job. You always get a job as a plumber. You'll always get a job as an electric installer, somebody who works in the
right.
So these are areas where you get people. There is job available, to the extent that we import this POP work in various houses, tiling. We have to be importing people from neighboring countries to come and do it here in Nigeria. That's a job. available job. But in the university, you go and study something that completely nobody is looking for that kind of certificate or knowledge which you have acquired. So unless and until we address this issue of mismatch between what students study and then what the job market require, we will not run away from this issue of unemployment. And it's one of the major issues that is driving every other aspect of the problems in the economy. You know that with unemployment, it means there is no earning, and then it will be those who do not earn anything, they will be easy recruits into crime and criminality. So we need to take that very seriously.
All right.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Rebecca Okengu, in your opening comments, you talked about climate change being one of the factors responsible for what's going on. As we begin to wind down, let's relate this to what can be done to ameliorate. Yes, it's nobody's making, and I like to always put this question when we talk about climate change. How is it that the countries of the world who are more responsible for the damage to the ozone layer are the ones who are still better off than parts of the world here where we don't even have the industries in the first place that would deplete and destroy the environment to that level?
But there are actually two ways that you have the climate crisis. One is through the emission of gases, which comes from industry. Sometimes you might be surprised even from your livestock breeding. The other one is from natural causes, from the shrinking or expansion of the Sahara Desert, which started, I think, in 1974. And a lot of reports up until the time it was getting close to us. And right now, I think we're about 3 kilometers into the Sahara Desert. Having said that, we've talked about agriculture and nobody's talked about food production. And until we're able to, delineate, segregate agriculture from food production, we might not begin to put the proper pros to what the challenges are. Because it is at the point in time we get to agriculture or we get to food production that we know that in food production, land is not king. What will be king will be technology. Okay? So, for me, this is where Prof was talking about climate smart agriculture. What climate smart agriculture simply means in ABC is technology supported, food production. That's what it is. Okay, and we haven't been able to. We're not able to do that well because we don't have, again, like I said to you, Cyril, we've not been able to create what we call our national database of our needs, okay, and our outputs against our inputs. Now, we have also not been able to, wholly begin to pursue what we might be able to call our indigenous solutions to be able to now solve our indigenous problems. That is another challenge. So, in tackling apart from the NDCs, the nationally determined commitments to climate change and what we call the greenhouse emissions, I don't think we've been able to develop a national program. I've had, in the course of these conversations, policies are what they are. Okay, there are thought lines. Okay, I've not been able to also see us talk about programs that are actionable. And this is where I think, again, we might need to tighten a little bit on our operational and governance and administrative structures that actually govern, our input and outputs. Somebody had mentioned human capital development. this is where our universities, we are now winding down to look for solutions. Remember that a lot of these universities, for those of us who attended, the Ivy League ones, the University of Nigeria and Sokas, the University of Ibadan's, the University of Ife, they didn't operate as just universities, they operated as centers of excellence. Okay, and a lot of them were very self-sufficient. But what you now have are universities that more, I don't know, I'm looking for the right word to use now, that are more political in operations, political in their development, political in their demands, okay, as against now contributing positively to that critical aspect of now the skills you need. Because I grew up in a university campus, University of Nigeria, so I'm proud to say that as a very young person, we had a works department, and everything that was in my father's house as a staff for university, was produced, maintained by the works department. And not one of them was a university graduate. They were just skilled technicians. Okay, so I think we should be able to reorder our priorities as a country. First and foremost, now by now juxtaposing and then putting into context where our immediate midterm and extended challenges are vis-a-vis human capital, which is very critical in developing those skills. But in developing skills, you must also develop what you call labor market agreements and job creation partnerships. Otherwise, you're going to be now training people, and they're not going to be. Prof talked about plumbers getting jobs. Yes, they might be able to get jobs, but they get menial jobs. But if you had plumbers that were trained, and then you had a compendium, a database of these plumbers, and then we had a policy of at least public sector institutions being able to use these plumbers, being able to use these mechanics, being able to use these electricians as first of right or first refusal, and then being able to now keep them in a pool where they can also begin to aim money for whatever institutions that they will be working, and it will start at us looking at our university systems. That would be the beginning. If we're able to, rejig how our university systems operate, and then we're not looking at these budgetary provisions, payment of university salaries, and we're looking at research outputs now becoming the basis, of proof of concept, and then taking it to commercialization, and then driving this as a matter of national policy into our infrastructure development circle. I think we might just turn the wheels in the right direction.
Right. Thank you so very much. And we flip over to Chief Niya Kinshiju. And yes, along those lines as well, what can be done?
It's the university system still remains just. I agree with Dr. Okengo here. The university system is still the bastion, of development. It's supposed to be the leading light, leading initiative in terms of research output. Of course, we all know that there's a disconnect between the town and the gown. So what we need to do, and of course I know that there is a conscious theme in the university environment where there's a lot of talks around the need to facilitate a connection between town and gown. The town, and I'm talking about industrial concerns, agricultural concerns, and the real sector generally, are always constantly in need for initiatives, that would lead innovation. And of course, by its priming, by its positioning, the university system, the polytechnic systems are supposed to be, the providers of this innovation, especially as the world goes into a smart universe, smart hub, as it were. So I also believe we still need to have that linkage between the university and the town, as it were. But again, more than that is to also look at our core. The core drivers of our economy. I am excited that it's likely we are able to move our electrical supply, electricity supply from 5,000 average as it were a megawatt now to 7,000 megawatt this year. I am looking forward to that. I had the power minister talks about waiting the arrival of mega transformers, from the cement deals, the cement intervention. Now, because we know that a megawatt, 1,000 megawatt increase in supply of electricity would impact production and productivity, and of course would have multiplier effect on job creation, and of course either direct or indirect jobs and services and all that. So I am looking at that. I am also looking at the final commissioning of the Ibadan Kano rail line, because as far as I'm concerned, that's a major economic corridor. Once if we're able to achieve that, even in the next 24 months, I am looking forward to the coastal rail line. Lagos Calabar rail line. This for me are strategic corridors, economic corridors, that once we are able to achieve them, will reduce cost of logistics, would increase the urbanization rate, and more than that, would of course reduce cost of movement of goods and people. So when this and again, perhaps more importantly, is to have the Dangote private sector initiated 630,000 barrels refinery come on stream. We are hopeful it will come on stream on or before first quarter 2023, and that would impact on dollar foreign exchange management. And again, we are also hopeful that the Port Harcourt refineries, the two refineries in Port Harcourt, will also come on stream before the end of first quarter 2023. That will also impact again the supply of our dollars, foreign exchange and foreign exchange management. So there are a lot of core issues to look at in the micro and the macro environment, economic environment, and we are only hopeful that the kind of commitment we have. I have tried as much as possible not to look at our problems, but to look at the policies that are being put in place and try to follow up on those policies. Where I think those policies are faltering, then of course we would engage, and that's what I want to enjoin Nigerian airlines. Let us look at what policies are being put in place, so that we don't become hopeless. We don't act hopeless. In this environment, as it were. We are in better place to look at opportunities emerging from all these policies and see, of course, how we can exploit them or harness them, as the case may be.
All right, so thank you so much, gentlemen. Just one bit, and this is a quick one. Has to do with, yes, you have made your suggestions, and everyone has seen that D. Akishiju says he'd prefer to look at the policies, not just the challenges and all the troubles, but one thing remains. All of this would be difficult to achieve or to impact positively if the country remains insecure. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Security is very important, and I think all hands must be on deck in this area. But it's being intensified by political activities. I keep saying this. I think we as citizens, I think we need to repent. We need to repent in the sense that if we want to get to a position, or we want to see how things could be done better, it shouldn't be forceful. Right. And that this is one thing that we all should agree. We need to take this insecurity, because it's about 60% politically motivated. And I think we should all look at this. And it's even encroaching on this what we call black market. I think we should come together to either abrogate the foreign exchange black market, or to intensify regulation of this market before it will cause a total collapse of the economy. I think this is all of us, all citizens, must agree to do this.
Right, we've just about done on this program. No one program, as I always say, can take on all the issues. So we'll leave this conversation here for tonight. And thank you all very much for coming. Thank you. Professor Aderibigbe Olamola, Professor of Economics, Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, NISA.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure to be here, and I thank you for having me.
I'd also like to say a big thank you to Professor Mohammed Sani Bello, Professor of Accounting and Finance, Kaduna State University. Thanks for being here.
Yes, nice to be here.
Okay. Dr. Emeka Okengu, Development Economist, former consultant to World Bank and United Nations. Emeka, it's always a pleasure to see you. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Privilege.
Right. And big thank you to Chief Ni Akishiju. I think I heard someone say quite recently, Hi Chief Ni Akishiju. Okay. Public Affairs and Financial Analyst. Thank you for coming. Right. And thank you too for being part of this program. We thank you all for being on the program. Next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Continue to stay safe.
Thank you.